I took a massive break from sim racing. Months. And when I came back, I didn't ease in. I threw myself into 3 races, 3 days apart, and 3 completely different outcomes happened. One ended with me parked the wrong way around, watching the entire field drive past. One started with me destroying my car before the first corner. And one reminded me exactly why I love sim racing so much. That felt very slow. As did that. As did that. Flat foot there, very easy. Don't want to hit that inside curb. Very slow. This is how I dragged myself back from rusty mediocrity after a massive break from sim racing. 1 minute 35.1, like 3 or 4 seconds off the pace. I was really slow. I started off in the GR86 in the same reference car that everybody else is in, fixed setup. So there's nowhere to hide when you're off the pace. It's just the fact that you're not very good. And I was very slow. No reference points for the braking, no feel for the rear, no real rhythm. I was braking too early into corners, I didn't really know how to take it, but luckily I did have familiarity with the track. Adelaide Street Circuit is about 10 minutes from my house, so I know exactly what the setup is and where the corners are, and I've spent a lot of time in the P Cup doing this particular track. So I was not in a disadvantage when it comes to the track, and I've honestly driven the car, the GR86, heaps in previous seasons. I was just in a disadvantage in the fact that my muscle memory was off. I needed to remember exactly where to brake, exactly where to accelerate, and exactly what to do. And as you can see here, I'm having a pretty average lap. I made up a few places at the beginning because of a few crashes. I'm braking pretty late. I have pace compared to the people in front of me, because after my quali lap, which was absolutely abysmal, I then just continued to lap. That was basically my practice. I had 8 minutes for quali, and that was my 8 minutes of practice. And that allowed me to be able to actually get pretty close to the pace. This was really the beginning of shaking the rust and the dust off of my sim gear and getting straight back into iRacing. But in this particular situation, I had a very unfortunate corner come. The final corner, I managed to get ahead, but this guy, he just does not stop on my left and completely pit maneuvers me. No idea what he was thinking, completely comes in, he brakes super late, there leaves no space for me on the outside, and just crashes right into my side. Got the instant replay for you. And then I do this. Whoa.
Oh.
I felt so bad. I didn't have my button map to apologize,
so sorry,
but
Glenn.
I felt so bad. That was a terrible re-entry.
I shouldn't.
And one of the very, very big pain points of a single monitor setup is I cannot check. But that put me bang smack in P17. So many places lost. I had to pit because I had such terrible damage, and luckily there were fast repairs, so I was able to repair the car and get back out there. My goal was to go, okay, no, not going to finish P16, I have to make it, you know, and get back out of the pits. Let's get back into this. I do not want to be, I'm on cold tires as well now, I don't want to be losing the race being P16, that's just depressing. There was no shot of me catching up to anyone, and I ended up finishing in exactly
And
P16.
that is it, I crossed the line, P16, absolutely shocking job.
It was pretty terrible finish. It was humbling. I lost I rating a massive amount. I did gain safety rating, which doesn't make sense because I crashed. But here's what I told myself. That's race 1. That's literally the worst I will be, the rustiest I will be. The only place left to go from here on out.
Today we are trying something different. The Porsche Cup in the iRacing 13th week. What that means, if you're not familiar with iRacing, is that it is the end of the iRacing season. All of the championship points are scored, and we kind of have like a free-for-all. This is one of the very few ranked official races that we can do, and so that is exactly what we are doing today. And in an effort to shake off my rustiness from taking such a long break and having one pretty average race with the GR86, I thought I would try a completely different car which I honestly hate, and I know this is the terrible idea. I'm 3 seconds off the pace, but we're going to hop into a quali, and we're going to see how we can go, because I just want to get back warmed up into iRacing. This season has some cool new features, and I want to really get back into it and get back into racing. But race 2 was the Porsche Cup. It's heavier car, there's more to manage, but there's a lot more power, and they're quite difficult to save when you start to lose the rear end, which is something that I really wanted to be aware of. I kept on going off at the end of the first corner because it's basically a 180 turn, and I would go off in the grass, and I was really trying to gain momentum, but my qualifying was pretty consistent. I had the little chicane down pretty quick, I thought, but I didn't really have the best luck anywhere else. I was braking way too hard, I was braking way too heavy. There were times where I actually, like here, I can just lift and coast, but I was braking as hard as I could, so I was definitely quite far off the pace. And qualifying went about how you'd expect from someone who hasn't raced in months. I finished with a 55.2, which was many seconds off the pace, which put me in P20 something for the start. Doesn't even matter which P20 something. And I got an off track straight after my first lap. And that made me start in dead on P20. Yeah, I thought, you know what, I got this. And then, honestly, just watch what happens. Boom. Shocking. Literally the worst possible situation to be in. One car didn't launch properly, someone stopped, I didn't swerve, I was looking everywhere, trying to stress about finishing, trying to stress about getting a good start, taking off well, and I just rear-ended a stationary car. Major damage, major spin, I had to pit immediately, and that one was just a rookie move. I should have swerved, I saw the car in front swerve, and I did not swerve. So I limped to the pits. Luckily, there was a fast repair again. Oh, what? We must have fast repairs on. I'm back out. That's good. And then I came back out dead last. I think I'm in P26. It is a terrible position to be in. And I thought, you know what? This race is pretty much over. Except it actually wasn't. Remember how I did those 8 minutes of quali before? Well, that was basically my practice. And in those 8 minutes, I was able to pick up the pace. So my race, it wasn't actually over. Because now, the pace that I found earlier, well, I got to use that. Every lap, I was reeling in cars. People are crashing because they can't control the rear end. I go from P26 to P25, then to P24, then to P23, I do a killer overtake on the first corner. You know what that guy's braking because I have to unlap myself. But I'm so confident in my pace, I don't know where this confidence came from, that I was unlapping myself place after place after place, all the way up until I got to P18, picking people up lap after lap. And you can see here, I have some crazy overtakes. I have some really consistent pace, and every lap, there's people crashing out. And those people crashing out are just giving me more and more and more places. On the back straight, I would go through the pit exit and I would basically gain one position. I was just having a blast. And then that happened. I accidentally rear-ended someone, 100% on me, another
That was terrible.
Then what happened? Another overtake. And then what happened? Another overtake. And then what happened? On the final lap, someone else spins out and I get another position. This race was the gift that kept on giving. I finished in P14 from P26 and I was having so much fun that I almost nearly rear-ended the guy in front of me. I was so happy. I drove it back to the pits after a triumphant race. You should always drive it back to the pits. And as much as I had negative safety rating, wrecked on my own, that was all on my fault, I got positive iRating, +5. That is crazy. So from P26 to P14, safety rating down, but iRating up. I decided to run it back for race 3. Race 3, it was late at night. My wife was asleep, so I could not talk, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to lock in and I'm going to do a full voiceover for the race. And this was the one that I had the most fun. My quality time wasn't the best, it was a 52.291.
but it was enough to put me up into P10. I get a pretty decent race start. I take it pretty wide on the opening corner, but I managed to maintain my position, and in fact I tried to go on the outside around the guys in front of me. I believed that I had the race pace. I don't know where this belief came from. I'm not really that confident, but I just thought, you know what, I think I have this. I have really good pace. And then I just get absolutely dive bombed from Connor. And Connor here, he's going to be a bit of a pattern in this episode. You can see he had a terrible re-entry there, and he was just a bit dodgy. I got contact points for nothing. The iRacing contact system is so stupid. I honestly might go to LMU just because of how dumb the safety rating system is. They punish any kind of hard racing. But I was able to recover. I was able to put one car between me and Connor, which made me feel a little bit better. Except Connor instantly tried to go for the overtake and successfully overtook. So it was just me and Connor again. But I knew I had pace. I was sitting in P4 at the end of the first lap, which honestly was incredible. But I had Connor right on my tail. And it was a bit of a worry, but I thought, you know what, I got this. Just gonna lock in. I think I have the pace. Every lap I was trying to get faster and faster and faster, and my goal was to finish with a podium. Because always the goal is to win every single race you're a part of. But I was able to start gaining on the guys in front. This was really hopeful, honestly. I just saw the time just continue to increase, and then we had someone go wide, almost knocks us out. I end up having to slam on the brakes, get a bit of contact there, bit of an unsafe entry, and here Connor, he gets a bit up there. You can see in the background, he goes for another lunge. This is a corner where he should not be doing that. And then the guy who's in P26, who had a terrible re-entry, decides, no, I'm going to go for it anyway, and then tries to stay in it again. And I don't know what he was thinking here, but he completely ruined my P4 positioning. Luckily, I missed him. It looked like he almost tried to come back and take me out again, and I managed to miss that. But that put me all the way back down into P9 with a little bit of damage. Really frustrating. Connor just completely disrespectfully took that chicane in a terrible, terrible way. And I managed to stay on the road, thought I'd lock back in, kept going, had this random guy just stop in the middle of the final fast corner where you're basically sending it through exactly where he span, so that was pretty unlucky, but I was able to, within a few laps, catch back up, took a really nice, clean inside line, and just having superior pace to the people behind me, which was really I had superior pace to the people around me, which was honestly fantastic. I was able to claw myself back to P7, and then I thought, you know what, I've got P6, and I did not have P6. I got span, and then I got span again by the same guy, which was so frustrating. So a really, really unlucky race, and this is where the damage is. You can see I'm driving straight, but my steering wheel is to the left. That puts me back down into P9 after potentially having the pace for a podium, and I have damage. And this is the moment where in race 1, I probably would have just pitted and gone, you know what, I'm going to come last, but I'd already had this too much. Unfortunately, my straight line pace, you can see here, it's not fast. But my corner pace is great. I have this guy in the corner. I accidentally somehow get 4 incident points for the guy behind me just completely rear-ending me, and somehow that's my fault. But I have this guy in corner pace. Obviously, I'm still feeling out the damage to the car, getting used to where the steering is. But I had a decision to make. Do I pit on the next lap, or do I stay out? If I pit on the next lap, I'm going to lose heaps of time. I'm going to be back in P15, 16, 20, something like that. Or do I think I can keep the pace in the car, defend hard, and I decided to fight for what I had. I stayed out, and the rest of the race was war. I had a damaged car, I was losing pace on the straights, but on the corners, I still had good pace. That is where my car was able to still go okay. There were people in my mirrors, there were people up ahead, and I had to defend for my life. I wanted to hit my marks, I wanted to cover the inside, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't allowing anyone to overtake me in the final corners. But I was making myself as wide as the rules allowed, and lap after lap, it was honestly just tough, fun, honest racing. I still had the pace to beat the people in front of me, but on the straights and out of the corners, I just did not have the ability to turn to keep the pace, and so I got many off tracks from this, but I was able to hold the P10 position. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't clean, but I was able to do it. But around the lap 15 mark, I started to notice someone. I was in 9th place, and Tobias was kind of catching up. The main problem was that if he overtakes me, that leaves the 2 or 3 cars behind to also overtake me. And that was not something that I wanted to have on my radar. But I had to just let him through. I did not have the pace to be able to keep up in some of the spots. But luckily, Tobias was a bit nervous, so I was able to kind of stay within range. And if I had a slipstream, I had pretty much the same pace. And everybody knows that overdriving, trying to brake later than you've ever broken, trying to accelerate faster than you've ever accelerated, trying to turn harder, it doesn't actually make you faster. It makes you make mistakes. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not going to make mistakes. I'm just going to drive. I'm just going to put the pressure on. I'm just going to not let the guys behind me stress me out. I'm not even going to think about them. I'm just going to drive. And that is exactly what I did. To be able to cross the finish line with a damaged car, 2 wrecks that weren't even my fault, and honestly one of the best finishes and most satisfying races to be able to nurse that car home. It wasn't a podium, it wasn't even close to a win, but it was the best I've driven in months. And I felt like after this race, I was very confident to be able to say that the rust has been shaken off. The pace was there. I honestly surprised myself in being able to pick up almost within a second of the pole position drivers within the 8-minute qualifying time. That is not normal. That is not normal for me. The defending was great, the decision making was okay, and that's the racer that I was trying to get back. That is the dust I was trying to shake off, the rust I was trying to repair. So I qualified P10, I climbed all the way to P4 with pace to potentially finish P3. I was spun, and then I was able to hold on to P10. It may not have been that P4 perfect finish, it wasn't a podium, but it was definitely the way to shake off the rust. But what I actually learnt was that you don't get the rust off by being careful, by sitting and practicing for hours. What converted that rust into prime stainless steel was just racing. By putting myself in the chaos, forcing myself to race, not being afraid of losing safety rating, of losing iRating, of being worried about any of that, it was just forcing the instincts to come back, just forcing the race to be interesting. But the iRating climbed, the skills climbed, the pace climbed, the enjoyment factor climbed, because I wasn't tiptoeing, I wasn't worried about trying to be safe or trying to be this or that. I was just racing for the sake of racing, because that's what I love. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you want to see next. And don't forget to join the Discord. If you could share this video with a friend who's also into sim racing or who just loves car culture in general, I would really, really appreciate that. It would mean the world. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.